Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Aurelia Lieb.
I'm Sam Williams.
And I'm Sierra Obermark. And today we are so happy to have back with us our guest, Christian. Woo!
Hi.
Woo! Thank you for coming, Christian.
Good to be here.
Hello again.
It again is almost excruciating hearing you all talk at a normal pace and not at 2 times speed. So this will be good for me. Yeah.
Wait, you did 2 times? That is hardcore.
Well, because I listened to the podcast at twice speed so that I can hear you guys more, you know. And
No, I get it. When I listen back, I do 1.5.
Oh, okay.
But two, that seems hardcore.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to like go back and be like, all right, what was the joke they made? I missed that. But yeah, it's good. And sometimes you guys miss the jokes too, but it's good. And I love that too. Yeah.
That is always really entertaining when someone throws one out there, and then when I go back and listen, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a great joke.
Right, yeah. Could have built a whole episode on that line, but we keep going, yeah.
Well, Christian, do you want to remind our listeners of your Potter details so they can refresh their memories?
Would love to, yeah. So let's see, my house, I think last time I said the same thing, that Ravenclaw is what all my stuff always says, like the little tests and whatever. I mean, I have a Ravenclaw shirt on right now. But I mean, also I was thinking about this recently. I was like, I'm also an American, so I am not a Ravenclaw because I'm not going to Hogwarts. So I guess I'm a Thunderbird. Yeah, let's see. I don't know. What are the other questions? My favorite book. That's right.
Your favorite book and your character.
Yeah, my favorite book and character. My favorite book is probably still Goblet of Fire. And it's probably because of the memories that it brings. And let's see, my kind of whole journey to Potter, like when I was 9 or 10, the books were recommended to me. And eventually I started reading them. At first I was very hesitant, but then I got into it, and I then got the family into it. And then it was like they were starting to become really popular with everyone. And so it was like, oh, I kind of already knew this thing, but it was cool. And so my family, we would listen to the cassette tapes, and we would always do it on road trips. And we'd just like sit in the parking lot or the driveway for a while to keep listening and finish the chapter or finish whatever. And it was really sweet. I remember specifically like standing in line to get Goblet of Fire when that became a huge thing. And then I got really eager, as a lot of us did, and I kept rereading them over and over again when I was a kid. And I literally had them just stacked on the back of the toilet. Like, all right, this is my bathroom reading, and my legs would fall asleep and whatever. And that was a lot of what I did. So Goblet of Fire, though, has that big memory for me because I just remember the anticipation of it, and then reading it and feeling like I felt like it was like the transition of Harry from dealing with like, oh, this is kind of a fun adventure, to like, okay, this guy's dying right in front of you, and here we go. And it's time to be a grown up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Recently, I've been picking it up a bit more. I just unpacked all my books. My mom had my books in storage for a while, and we finally cleared out her storage unit. I was like, oh, my Harry Potter books. So I reread the full 7th book before this episode because I'm so pumped for it. And that's been really, it was like really eye opening to me because I haven't cracked these things open a lot recently, but so I definitely don't have the lore knowledge that you all do, but I still love Potter. Favorite character is always a question. Hagrid is definitely up there for me. Although recently I've become really partial to Ron, and he actually has a cool turnaround in this chapter, so I'll look forward to talking about that a little bit.
Well, I'm just glad that Irvin isn't here.
Yeah.
I know. Every time you tell us on the pod that, which is twice now, that Hagrid is one of your favorite characters, the prayer is also sent out that Irvin doesn't come and strike you down.
I know. Yeah, I got to go listen because I think that was that on the Lohomora episode that he just...
It was a Lohomora episode. Yeah, if you go back and you find the Haggard one, it is just kind of a shouting match for 3 hours.
Yeah. I tried to mediate, but was not very successful.
I forgot that you were on that, really.
Yeah. It was just Alison and Irvin at some point just going, yes, no. And I was like, okay, this is not even a discussion anymore.
We're not getting anywhere. This is just that scene in Emperor's New Groove. Nuh-uh, yeah.
Nuh-uh. Yeah, precisely. And Aurelia is Yzma, I guess, in that place going, ugh.
It got to a point where I was like, why am I still here? They don't need me. They just shout at each other.
Well, hopefully we will have no shouting matches today. For today, we are gathered to discuss on our episode number 40. Wow, 40. Huge. Yep. Chapter 22 of Deathly Hallows, which is the 184th chapter of the Harry Potter series, and it is titled, as you might be able to guess, Deathly Hallows, to round out our titular chapters theme that we've been doing. So we encourage you to read the chapter before listening. But as I'm a huge fan of Aurelia saying, we're not your mom.
Oh my God, I love that. We're not your mom.
So do what you want, but it could help.
While we probably won't have any shouting matches, we do have a Patreon shout out for my own namesake, for only the first name, unfortunately. I wish we were related in all aspects. A huge thanks to Sam Omen over at our Patreon, who bought us this round of drinks. Thank you for supplying us at the pub, Sam.
Yay.
Woo! Thank you.
Delicious.
If you, dear listener, would like to buy us around at the pub, which we would love, head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3 to sign up. That's patreon.com/3broomsticks. We're offering up bonus content, chats with the hosts, on episodes, shout-outs to our Patreons. Sierra and I have recorded one session of D&D, Harry Potter-inspired D&D. I play a crotchety old Ilvermorny retired professor that sets fire to a mangrove tree for no reason, and all chaos ensues.
Why am I not surprised that you chose chaos?
He also attempts to go for ill-advised swims.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. There are a couple of saving throws on me drowning myself by accident. Or on purpose. I guess you'll just have to listen. Aurelia and I today will be recording a bit about our quintessentially quality Quidditch League, which is a completely made-up Quidditch league with scores and figures and 6 hours of ChatGPT work yesterday to get prepared for it. So please give that a listen.
And just after this episode, or just before this episode has been released, Sophia and Irvin did a whole episode about throwing Harry Potter parties. So if you want to celebrate the 1st of September as a significant event coming up, give that a listen, because they are both professional party throwers. So they had a lot of good ideas and shared a lot of cool memories.
Speaking of September 1st, Sierra and I are working on this summer, recording through Twitch, our playthrough of Hogwarts Legacy, which we hope to get a couple hours out on September 1st.
Woohoo.
So, all in all, we have a lot of Patreon content. Please come and subscribe.
Do it. There's a lot of cool stuff on there, everyone. I highly recommend.
Thank you, Christian.
And now we will raise a toast with the drinks that Sam bought us. So let's offer a toast to the comments of episode 37, which was about the journeys from Hogwarts. So not to Hogwarts. I know we've done that before, but we're actually journeying away from Hogwarts this time. And we raise our glass to commenter Absent-Minded Raven, who said, I suspect that too many stamps gag was in reference to UK postage. Their stamps seem to be a standard amount, 1p, 2p, 5p, 10p, etc., equivalent to coins. But the cost of postage has changed a lot over the years. Between the late 80s and the early 90s, the price went up nearly every year. So I hope I've put enough stamps on was probably a common concern.
That's valid.
That's so cool. It's also great research.
Yes. As someone who, for a while during my job and also still now, has to frequently send mail in like odd sized packages and lots of papers, and it has to be by weight and all sorts of things. I really hope I've put enough stamps on is a very common concern for me. And so if like for a while I had to have like a postage weight thing that would just print the what the amount was, because I could not be trusted to actually put enough stamps on. So I get it.
You can make the same commentary today, because I mean, I think stampflation is a huge thing these days, and I think even like the cost of stamps hasn't actually gone up as fast as it should be going because of like how crazy inflation itself has been. So I think we're going to see even more. So you're right on us. Arthur's going to be confused.
Yes. On a stamp tangent though, forever stamps, not forever.
Not forever.
Like,
I know.
That's the whole point of it, is that a stamp is a stamp, and if it says forever, then you use it as forever. But no, sometimes you still have to put like 4 forever stamps on something, and that just seems like a shenanigan.
See, I don't want to disappoint all of you, because I'm very familiar to the system from Germany, but in the UK nowadays, there's only second class and first class stamps, and they don't have any value assigned to them. So there's only like types of stamps now. And apparently the only difference is that second class takes a bit slower, but with how slow the post has been recently, I'm not sure that's even possible.
It doesn't really matter.
Honestly.
They tie it to Hedwig.
Not to discuss Harry Potter on this podcast, but I am interested that in the Harry Potter portion, no, I'm kidding. It is interesting to me. A lot of people criticize the books and like, there's no way they could be set in the 90s. There's no 90s references, and like here's very clearly a 90s reference to a 90s problem that was going on. One of my favorite things that has happened on Reddit though is that there's no reference to 90s icons being a thing, and one of them is like, well, there's no reference to the Chicago Bulls, and it's like, well, how much was the wizarding youth of Britain watching an American basketball sport? Clearly Harry, because he said basketball at one point as a reference to Oliver Wood. But somebody else, well, there's no mentions of like butterfly clips. And somebody went through all of this, was pre-Kindle books coming out, so very early internet. Somebody went through all the books and found a reference of one of the Patil twins wearing a butterfly clip just to prove them wrong.
Love it.
And those were Michael Jordan stamps on package too. I mean,
hope we put enough stamps to the entire 96 Bulls or 94 Bulls.
Yep.
That's so funny. Oh my goodness gracious. Great comment from Absent-Minded Raven, as usual. If you would like to comment, please go to our website and put a comment under the episode. You are almost guaranteed for it to be read on air. And now to the chapter. Deathly Hallows, chapter 22, The Deathly Hallows. Xenophilius Lovegood is a spineless piece of garbage who cannot ever be forgiven for his betrayal of Hermione Knows-It-All, the willfully wrong Weasley, and Mr. Dark and Sullen Harold Pottyface. Well, I suppose one might want to take into consideration that Xenophilius is an odd man, like his daughter, has trouble making meaningful connections, has been ostracized by mainstream wizarding society, may we all be so lucky, and lost his wife to a freak spell experiment, meaning the only person he loves with all his heart and soul has been ripped away from him as a punishment for his own actions. So, a little forgiveness might be okay, which Harry and Hermione seem to appreciate. That's where this chapter opens. The direct aftermath of the Erumpents, that's the creature featured as a laborious and lusty beast in the initial Fantastic Beasts film, its horn blowing up Xenophilius' houses as the Death Eaters come to collect a one Mr. Harry Potter. Hermione shows empathy, Ron shows vitriol, and Harry, ever the harbinger of the audience, watches with mainly concern for Luna. The person who really cannot be forgiven is Hermione, who lied and conned Harry and Ron to get them to visit Xenophilius and ask about the fictional Deathly Hallows, putting them all in great danger. The visit sparks a debate that rages within Harry for several chapters. Hallows or Horcruxes? While we all know at this point the answer is you can do two things, you adults, Harry, Hermione, and Ron don't. And so they discuss and disagree. Hermione, who was all aflutter with the Deathly Hallows just one chapter ago, finds them to be fake, a la Minerva McGonagall on the Chamber of Secrets, while Harry goes full-blown mad scientist and cries, "Eureka! I've got it!" We are eventually distracted by the conundrum of different H words in the Wizarding world by the cozy humor of Potterwatch, where any Death Eater listening would know to kill Lee River Jordan, Royal Kingsley Shacklebolt, and Romulus Remus Lupin. But never fear, Harry and Hermione are really stubborn. But at least Hermione can keep a lid on saying you-know-who in the you-know-what, so the you-know-witches don't snatch away the you-know-plot-protected heroes. And thus ends our chapter.
Woo.
All right.
Very nice, very nice.
I feel like it's impossible, but your chapter summaries seem to be getting better and better when they've already started like being so incredibly great.
Oh man, what a transitional chapter this is.
Yeah.
C and I were talking about it just a bit before the pod. Just it's like, all right, they have an aftermath reaction, they have an argument, we get a little bit of like warmth because we haven't had that in a little bit, and then the actual action picks back up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is in general the mind-blowing thing about the seventh book is like it starts really slow, we camp forever, never, and then suddenly it's like all the plot happens in 2 days. And you're just like, oh,
yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is AKA the chapter that didn't really need to be a chapter. And also AKA the one where Harry is actually right and Hermione is very wrong.
It's very wrong. But before that argument, we have the aftermath of the betrayal of Xenophilius Lovegood, who, as if readers remember, Hermione like spends a lot of time convincing Harry that we need to go and talk to him about the Hallows because of this symbol that Dumbledore left in this book that he then left me. And instead of being like, "Oh, we should go talk to Victor Crumb," like my ex-boyfriend who knew about this symbol and pointed out and said that this was what's his name, Grindelwald's symbol. She's like, no, let's go talk to my kind of frenemy's father. and has to convince Harry to go and do it, and then is all like, we should have never gone, I hope he doesn't die.
Yeah, I think like it's kind of a low blow, especially because in this chapter she's going, Harry's like, well, you're the one who pointed out it's a quest and you have to find it out on your own, and she's like, I just said that to get you to go.
The lying and conniving Hermione Granger.
Like, oh my gosh, Hermione. Like, really? You know he's going to cling on to that. Mr. Quests a lot. Come on.
Do you think was she just saying that, though? Or is she saying that now because she doesn't want this? You know, like, maybe she did think that.
I'm right with you.
And then now she's saying, oh, well, no, I didn't mean it, really. I don't know. That Hermione bothers me a lot in this chapter because it's like so clearly, like Harry's so clearly right. But yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's embarrassed mostly. And Hermione kind of always tends to lash out and go into full like, well, here's all the different logic that could tell you that I'm right. And my logic changes because now my temperament's been loose and I'm not regulating well enough. So therefore I'm going to murder you with all of this different language. And that's what this sort of bit reads to me. So I don't know, Christian, what the answer is. That does she kind of believe it before she went? Was she just saying that, or is she just saying it now? It's great speculation, and I think you could read it either way for the character.
Well, and I saw so many times in this chapter how fearful she was, which isn't often shown. I mean, like, or worse, expelled, you know, like that's the extent of Hermione's fear, is being expelled. But this is the first, I don't know. As I was reading through it, I was like, it's clear that she's scared. And that's like a huge, I mean, fear is a big motivator as to not do something. you know.
Yeah, I also think partly at the beginning of this, of her like being so anti the Hallows, I almost feel like she's so wound up from having Xenophilius not listen to her about the Erumpent horn that she like can't handle not being listened to twice in a row. And so she's like, no, I was right about that and I'm right about this. And so she's just digging her heels in and not like allowing theory to come through, which like, as we'll get into, like all the theory and the myth is kind of backed up by fact that they've already seen in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And so but she's just so like, she just has to be right now. And she just can't, I think also probably Christian, with that fear that she's experiencing, probably some of that is coming into play because she's like, we're already on a quest and we're already kind of stuck with that. Now, if we go and get distracted with this one, but we never finish the other one, I think she's feeling like there's too many things going on. How are we going to do them all at the same time?
Yeah.
And so, you know, yes, you can do two things, but also I don't think Hermione can do two things. Hermione missed Time Turner millions of classes. Can't handle figuring out two things at a time.
But I think for her, it's really that she genuinely doesn't believe that they're true, which is it's
and
quite
not
interesting
worth their
considering
time.
that they are, you know, even the Horcruxes quest, yes, they've given it by Dumbledore, but Dumbledore very much starts the like year 6 private lessons with, oh, this is no longer facts. This is just theories that I think are true, but that we have no real evidence for are they true. Yes, we have evidence that there are Horcruxes because the diary and some of the other ones that by that point Dumbledore has already found, but like we have no idea how many there are. There's like
Hermione needed to hear that from Dumbledore's mouth specifically.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So if Dumbledore had written in her copy of Beedle of Ours, like, look for the Deathly Hallows, this is the most important thing, she'd be like, yeah, right. Dumbledore says it's
okay.
true, so it's true.
I don't want to derail our Hallows versus Horcruxes conversation that we've already jumped into, but let's just quickly go over the Xenophilius stuff before we get to the actual discussion.
Yes.
You have a moment in here, Aurelia, where you put in Ron's note.
So Ron basically serves him right to Xenophilius being captured by the Death Eaters. And I'm not sure, I mean, I get saying that in like the spur of the moment and it was, you know, you're probably still pumping with adrenaline, but do we think that's true? Does he deserve this?
I don't. As a parent, it's really hard not to agree with Xenophilius here. His only daughter, the last of his family, is in danger directly because of him. And I would be hard pressed not to do anything possible to like stop her from coming to harm. I mean, on the other side of things is like, it's basically like loyalty to family versus loyalty to a cause. But like Xenophilius isn't in the order. He's been doing what he can to support, you know, Harry and the anti-Voldemort everything through the Quibbler. But you have to imagine that Luna, despite her loyalties to the cause and Harry, she's got to know her father isn't as strong as her in that respect and would choose her. And she would have to, like, she would understand and forgive him for caving to the threats against her life. But I don't think that if roles were reversed and like they had captured Xenophilius to get Luna to do something, I don't think Luna would make the same choice. I think she would choose the cause because that's the type of person that she is. She wouldn't choose her father, which is kind of sad, but understandable because like those other people have also become her family, whereas Xenophilius only has Luna. And so like she is choosing her family. She's just choosing the majority of them. And he only has her left. So I think it's, you know, a spur of the moment Ron moment there. Sure. But I wouldn't agree. I think Xenophilius is doing what he thinks is best in that moment. And that's like a lose-lose situation for him. So I think, you know, he's doing the only thing he can think of, which is don't put my child in more danger than I already have.
Yeah. I think if we were just talking about Xenophilius's house blowing up, I would be much more like, yeah, serves him right. Yeah, tried to betray us, was really thick about Hermione saying that this isn't a rumpet horn. Yeah. I mean, you can repair all of this stuff. It's an awful shock, and you'll be a lot more careful. And your house blew up, which is a horrible experience. But you also have magic to put it all together. Serves you right. But being caught and captured by a group, especially with a master that has been known to kill people in cold blood, to torture them, and that we know that they have not been kind to their enemies. We hear just a little bit from now that a different character's father, Nymphadora Tonks's father, is killed. Mm-hmm. So I feel like serves him right to go with this group that at any moment could just be like, you know what? You're dead, Xenophilius, and just Avada Kedavra him. It's harsh. It's too harsh for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, kudos to Hermione for in the moment realizing what she could do, you know, to possibly achieve the best outcome of showing them Harry, so that, you know, Xenophilius isn't punished for just calling them in for nothing. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But then also protecting Ron and Ron's family by hiding Ron.
Yeah, it's maybe one of her more brilliant in the moment under pressure actions, because we've seen her be brilliant and not do that well in Defense Against the Dark Arts and practical examinations in that way, but in the moment to be able to think through so clearly. Yes. Oh, my dog is barking. Pause for a second.
Well, I was just going to say, I did go back to look because I think Ron is actually referring specifically to the house being blown up. Because Hermione says, didn't I say it wasn't a rumpet horn? Didn't I tell him? And now his house has been blown apart. And then Ron says, serves him right. But then he goes straight into, what do you reckon they'll do to him? Yeah. So it's like he is kind of responding specifically to the house being blown up, but it does have that kind of weird mix of like then going into, well, we also know that he's now been captured. And then Hermione says, I hope they don't kill him. And then we get into her whole details of what, you know, her thought process there, which, yeah, I agree. I mean, she usually is not amazing under pressure. I mean, build a fire, but there's no wood. Like, that's not always her strong suit, but this is like a perfect moment. And I was just looking. I was looking also, you know, she's worried about Xenophilius, and then she's thought through, well, what are they going to do to Ron's family? But then Ron is like, but what about your family? And she just goes, they're in Australia.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, when I was rereading this chapter, I was kind of racking my brains. I was like, did she only explain to Harry what she did with her parents, or did she also explain it to Ron? Because
Ron just as adult,
and he's just being adult. Like,
Christian, do you know?
I think she explained it to both of them, because it was like while they're showing
so he's just being dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, do they learn geography? Does Ron know where Australia is?
Yeah, he might not.
Well,
it's a colony in the Americas
because of apparition, and it's like, well, that's next door. You know, like
Voldemort could just be there tomorrow. Yeah. When did she tell him, Christian? What were they doing?
I think it's when with the ghoul in pajamas, like when they're showing, okay, here's what I've done, and
the precautions.
Yeah.
And I obliviated my family and put them in Australia, Harry. We're committed to this.
Right.
Okay.
Speaking of Hermione's brilliance, Aurelia, you have a quote in here of truer words never spoken.
Yeah. because both of them, like Ron goes off and says, you're a genius. And then Harry agrees and says, yes, you are. I don't know what we'd do without you, which, you know, what would they do without Hermione? Like, they would have definitely not lasted this long.
So they would have been killed by the devil snare.
It's so true. But then she like immediately spends the rest of the chapter being totally wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're a genius and you're perfect at everything. And what would we do without you? Oh, but but now this whole argument's going to like kind of tear us apart. And then Ron being like, he's so hung up on making up for the lost time, and especially with Hermione, that he's like forcing himself to be on her side or like stay positive and direct them because Harry's now like lost in thought. And I just, on like a side note, you know, like obviously Hermione's a genius. What would they do without her? But if Ron had been this way from the beginning, would they be farther along? Would they found more Horcruxes by now? Or is it only like the weird circumstances that end up bringing them to the other Horcruxes? Or like, do you think that if Ron had been like on the ball like he is here, that maybe they would have come to better conclusions because they wouldn't have been so distracted about everybody's hormones?
I think that's really fascinating.
This is one reason I really Ron has become one of my favorites from this, because I mean, it's said that when they start going on the camping trip, he's like whereas we've never gone, or we've gone without meals, Ron's always had 3 meals a day, and he's like he's used to a very comfortable life. Even, I mean, he's poor, but they're still eating, you know. I don't know. I think the locket was such a burden for him. And then to have gone away and then been on his own, which is, I think, the first time he's been on his own. I mean, he essentially in Hogwarts has leaned on them the whole time. And then, you know, he's been on his own and kind of realizes, oh yeah, the world sucks. And then like, I need my friends, and goes and finds this. And suddenly it's like, okay, like, wait a minute, I can step up and be a role. And there's such a transformation here with Ron, and I mean, there might be an element of the whole what's the book called? I wrote it down. The 12 fail-safe ways to charm witches. Like, there's probably an element there of like, oh, this will help with everything. But I mean, it's very clear that he's made the transformation because of being on his own and destroying the locket, and it's like this is now the real Ron Weasley coming forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because I think the only thing that he's really done alone up until now is just being a keeper, and them winning while Harry and Hermione were in the forest with Grop. Like, other than that, I mean, he doesn't really have anything that he hasn't. I mean, he's got the team, but they pretty much say it's all him because of the saves he was making and everything. So like, it's really like that's only one moment in all of this that he's like gone off and figured out how to do something independently and succeeded independently, which is his goal of his life.
It really is. If you look at the Mirror of Eris at all of those individual accomplishments. But if you're talking about stuff that Ron has done solo, he did Lavender Brown by himself.
God,
wow.
I knew it.
see, I'm not sure that counts, because I'm pretty sure Lavender Brown did Ron by herself.
I would definitely argue it was that direction.
He was but a tool.
It's such a rolling thing to do, to be like, you're a genius, Hermione, and then the rest of the chapter being like, Hermione's wrong. She repeatedly does it in like Half-Blood Prince, where Harry's like, I never learned from Snape as much as I did from the Prince ever. And he's like, yes, it's clearly, so many hints when you reread it. I was like, every time the Prince gets mentioned, either the sentence before or after Snape gets dropped in.
It's Snape,
Right.
I also think that it speaks to sort of Ron, Hermione, and Harry's reactions to the Horcruxes, and this question of like, would we have found more Horcruxes or not? Because Ron is super insecure. We see that because when he has the locket on him, he's the most affected by it, including all of these. He's lost his cushy life, or at least the warmth and comfort of the life around him. And so the locket's constantly getting to him, bothering him about like Harry likes, or Hermione likes Harry, and probably Harry likes her back, and all of these little things. And I wish I had food and I could be warm in my bed right now, and all that sort of stuff. I also don't necessarily think, Sierra, that we would have found more Horcruxes, and I'll go through why. Pretty much it is really great coincidence that they happen to live in the house where RAB lived.
Yeah.
So they find that one through Harry's baby detective skills about being like, RAB, Regulus blah, 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 black. I forget his middle name. Arcturus. Oh God, that's RAB. Eureka. Like Harry goes and finds it. And then they hatch this plan and they do it. And they do that with Ron being present. And then they have the Horcruxes, but like they might have found a better means or have been more critically thinking on finding a way to destroy that Horcrux before Snape has to show up with the sword. But in terms of finding any other Horcruxes, they have no leads. Like, I'll get to this a little bit later, where I'm like, I don't understand why Hermione's so against even researching the Hallows a bit more, because they have nothing to do. It's just because of Harry's moment of saying Voldemort at the end of this chapter that causes them to go to the Malfoy Manor, where Bellatrix let slip a clue through her emotional reaction that there is one at Gringotts. So, like, I don't think that we would have found anything, because this trio is just kind of running around the woods with like a chicken with their head cut off going, where's the Horcrux? Will it pop up in front of us? Turns out kind of, because they make mistakes. Yeah,
I mean, I guess my thought, I mean, I figured most of it is really just wrapped up in the circumstances of everything. But at some point, I don't know. I mean, he's thinking of like, he's listing all those locations of like, well, where has Ron been? I mean, where has Voldemort? Ron is listing where Voldemort has been, all the different locations. Well, Ron knows about all the different like wizarding spots and towns and whatnot. And maybe he wanted to live there, or et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like if they continued kind of on that path, they would get to what they get to later, which is, hey, Voldemort entrusted his most trusteds with this important thing.
Yeah.
Who is most trusted? Oh, Bellatrix. Hello.
Carrying his child.
No. And so...
canonically, she is carrying his child.
You know what? Canonically, if she was carrying his child, we would see a baby bump already.
Maybe.
Definitely.
Or a baby.
Actually, I think she was just born.
Whatever.
She was just born like a month before. I know. No. Oh, I know. But wizard cloaks, it's all disguised, and Jack Thorne did a great job.
Canonically does not wear one.
Oh, she's just stark naked?
No, she just doesn't. She has like a totally different outfit.
It's not canon because the rules of time travel completely changed from book 3. So no, it's true. Not canon.
It's time travel canon. But anyway, so like I feel like if they had more time, the Snatchers don't show up right at the end because of Harry's whoops. They could eventually get around to that idea. And if Ron had been on the ball, they would have already made it through locations and have gotten to people by now, instead of all this other shenanigans that they've been going through. I don't know. That's just my theory, is that potentially they'd be a little bit further on. And I wonder if they were a little bit further on, if Hermione would be a little bit more open to the idea of starting a Hallows research as well.
But I think to Christian's point, Ron's leadership doesn't really show up until after he makes his Deluminator discovery and comes back. And I think that Harry and Hermione's minds are working with all pistons firing correctly. Mm-hmm. So I just don't know, unless occasionally Ron has had sudden brainwaves that Hermione's been like, oh my God, I'm so attracted to you. and I just don't know if that pops up that's fair. If he's not sullen. But maybe he would have been like, maybe we should trap Bellatrix and torture her and interrogate her.
Isn't that like the general like consensus of the fandom, that like in book 1 we get like Jess Master Ron, who's like really helpful, and then like for the next 5 books he's like there, and you're just like, what happened?
What strategy?
Like,
what are you talking about? I don't know what strategy is.
Strategy. What is this strategy?
So you're telling me, Ron, imagine Voldemort is the king on a chessboard.
Yeah.
What's chess?
But it is like he was set up as a character that he then never really seemed to be growing into. So it's
True.
Yeah.
I mean,
It does bother me.
I think the thing about Ron is that he is what kind of keeps the group together more than anything. Like, I mean, and I'm kind of guilty of this. I'm always the one that just invites all the people over and makes sure everyone has the place, and then let them go on their quests while they're at my house or whatever. But you need someone that brings everyone together in order to get things done. Otherwise, everyone's going to be off doing their own thing and probably not interacting as much. And I feel like that's the role that Ron has played, just being a Weasley. And I appreciate that. Like he's the friend to a lot of people, even if he might be complaining about people behind their backs or whatever. He's the
or
friend.
just straight up not talking to Harry through most of Goblet's first half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but Goblet was Harry's quest more than anyone else's. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He was one of 4 champions.
Yeah.
In my headcanon, Minerva McGonagall saw that game of chess and was like, I can't have somebody be better than me, and so obliviated Ron's chess.
And she's like, no more free time, always homework. You guys don't get to play chess anymore.
And then, so after we're finally done with the whole sort of Xenophilius conversation, we get the ground breaks open with Hermione complaining, saying, "There's just, they can't exist. This was a total waste of time. This was Godric's Hollow all over," which I found was a little bit petty of Hermione being like, "I just want to remind you, Harry, that you also screwed up with Godric's Hollow. So don't come at me as hard."
Yeah.
And then Ron's like, "I don't know, they could exist," which is a very Ron line to be like, don't be too quick to doubt, Hermione. And then we'll get to the Harry kind of just goes into left field, soundly, but goes into left field a bit. But we have this argument breaks out with Hermione, as you point out, Aurelia, is completely immediately against it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly surprising to me that she is so against it, considering of what they've been doing for the last months. So, and also, she is the first one to say in the previous chapter about the death stake and ones like that have possibly existed. But then when they go back to her and say but you said those could have existed, she's like, yeah, but not really. And I was just like, okay. But you have the invisibility cloak. You've always known that one existed since book 1. You were the one to mention the wand. And yes, the one that's probably the most unbelievable is the resurrection stone. And I get that she's so against that one, because that one is the least believable, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it's still funny to me that she's like, no, this cannot absolutely not be true. And it's just, yeah, I've said it before, we know going into this that Dumbledore is saying we're not doing facts anymore. This is the murky waters of myths and stuff. And then she's like, yeah, but I only do facts. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Hermione.
Well, I think it's interesting too. I mean, Christian, you pointed this out really well. She's so afraid, and fear is this huge motivating factor for her. And it seems like Hermione is also very bought into this sort of academic idea of what it says in the textbook is the thing that can occur. And what makes Dumbledore so great is that he is willing to take what he sees, what actually occurs, as proof, not just what somebody wrote down or established as this is true because I can prove it, but he's able to take new information in and say, actually, these other things might exist while also knowing all the academic information.
Well,
and
he also
his
gave
mind
her,
feels more open.
He gave her literally the closest you could have to a textbook on the Deathly Hallows. Like, he literally was like the only thing he gave her. And that's the point to me. That's just, come on. Like, why else would you have this fairy tale book? Like, there's no other reason. It's not about the cauldron with the boot or whatever. Like, it's definitely this one. And that's
the one with the symbol that he notated
that
he gave to you in his will, like, where he doesn't really know you that well.
It's painfully obvious. Like, I remember as a kid reading this, I was just like, are you, like, come on, look at the fact. It's we know what the other two were kind of given for. This is why this was given to you. Use it. Like, that I think is the hardest thing for me. But then I reflect back on and I think Harry even quotes it when he's like going through his little mind drama, but that Xenophilius says, like, you talking to Hermione, you're, I gather, not unintelligent, but painfully limited, narrow, and close-minded. And it's like, okay, yeah, so everyone kind of knows, like, you're smart, but you gotta, like, think a little bit outside the box with this.
Yeah, so when she's confronted with new facts that distort her old facts, she's very slow to accept them. Yeah. And that is, I think, one of her biggest downfalls. And that is certainly the biggest flaw in this chapter. After being like, you're so amazing, what would we do without you? Well, these aren't real. And then Harry's hubris of being like, I know I just said you were amazing, and what would we do without you? But I know better.
And at the same time, I mean, if she didn't have that quality, you wouldn't have the rise up against house elf enslavement and stuff, you know, like 100%. Because she sticks to what she knows, and that's a good quality in those
she
lines.
Knows slavery is wrong, and therefore, when it factors in with her morals, it creates a very compelling character as well.
Yeah, it is interesting though that, you know, as a Muggle-born, she was introduced to this world, and within the first months of knowing this world, you know, the Philosopher's Stone is a key part of her world. Which, that sounds like a ridiculous thing to exist. But then she's like, a powerful
it
one.
Sounds just like the Resurrection Stone.
Exactly. This is where I draw the line. This is like... Well, I've never really understood why she's so firmly against certain parts of the magical world when she didn't grow up in it, when she wasn't, you know, raised with all of this. But, you know, I think with the prophecy stuff and the whole Trelawney thing, that is mostly McGonagall dismissing it, and Hermione looks up to McGonagall so much.
So much, yeah.
Yeah, but kind of on like 2 points off of what you were just talking about, like, not only did she come across the Philosopher's Stone, but then the Chamber of Secrets, which is also not supposed to be real, and then time travel, which people don't really hear about, like 3 in a row. She's like 3 for 3 on like non-existent technologies that exist. Yeah.
Well, and then literally Voldemort comes back from the dead. Like, it's like, but a resurrection stone. 4. That's crazy. Like,
oh my god! Just all the different things that she comes across, right? It's the Sorcerer's Stone, the Philosopher's Stone, the Chamber of Secrets, which is supposed to be mythological, time travel, which is supposed to be impossible, coming back from the dead. Voldemort does literal prophecies that like are foretold. Future sight is confirmed, and there's a whole hall of them when she's been denying that divination is a thing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And then Horcruxes, which are an explanation which she's never heard of, but she's instantly sort of bought in, even when she's like, I've never heard of them, but Dumbledore said it, therefore it's cool. Versus she cannot hack Xenophilius Lovegood, saying even though Xenophilius Lovegood has done her personally a lot of good. Like, anyways, this is a great point.
Yeah, and then, you know, you could go to like, well, she really trusted like McGonagall's judgment, and that's why she's like doubting things. But so like, here's my theory: if McGonagall gave her Tales of Beedle the Bard, she would believe it. If it didn't come from Dumbledore, if McGonagall gave it to her and was like, "Here, you might want to look at this chapter right here," she totally would be like, "The Hallows are real. Let's go find them."
I do kind of wonder, and I know Irvin would be able to answer this, why can't Dumbledore just have written Hermione a letter in code in the book that says, I mean, I know it's looked over by the Ministry, but it's still, he could have found a bunch of different ways to get her information just straight to her that said, the Hallows are real. Please try and find them on the quest while you look for Horcruxes.
See, the thing is, though, it has to be a quest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if Dumbledore had told Hermione that, she would have.
And the whole Hallows versus Horcruxes, the reality is Hallows and Horcruxes. It's not one versus the other, because Hallows alone is not good enough. They need to still destroy all the Horcruxes.
Right.
And realistically, they don't need the Hallows to be successful if, it means that Harry dies, but they could still destroy Voldemort if they destroy all the Horcruxes.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's a little bit of irony in something that Hermione says. She says, if surviving was as simple as hiding under the invisibility cloak, we'd have everything we need already. I found this kind of ironic because Harry does kind of do that. Both when he's walking into the forest to die and to hide after he's died. But at least the second time, he's already the master of all the Hallows and has destroyed all of the Horcruxes at the time that he does this. So it's like he has everything he needs, but only because he also completed everything else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that that's like an interesting little foreshadow.
So it doesn't stop me being a bit frustrated that Dumbledore couldn't have been a tad bit clearer.
Well, I mean, this is Dumbledore we were talking about.
Yes, I know. And my frustrations will never die.
Dumbledore explaining things, LOL.
I think he could have easily used like Marauder's map technology that only responded to her voice or something. Like, come on, it's not unheard of in the realm of Harry Potter to have a secret message in a book. But on the flip side, I was also surprised that the Ministry didn't pick up on, hey, the symbol is here. Hey, Frank and Runes, isn't the symbol the Deathly Hallows symbol? Are they going to be looking for that? Like, that was kind of weird to me that we went over this entire book and we you really didn't pick up on that. And I found that a little surprising. But
I think on that one, it's more because of everything in recent history, it's more associated with Grindelwald than Deathly Hallows.
That was going to be my point too. Yeah.
So I think that's more like where everybody would kind of go in their thought. If they knew anything about that symbol, it would probably be that Grindelwald had adopted it. Not that it had anything to do with the Deathly Hallows. And also, if they just read the story, if they just read the story, it's clearly the Deathly Hallows. So like having the symbol of the Deathly Hallows above the story of the Deathly Hallows is not.
Well, I don't. Is it actually called the Deathly Hallows in?
No, it's called The Tale of the Three Brothers, but that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And it's not like anybody like knows that that's like, I don't think it's very popular belief that that's like the colloquial term. It's not like, oh yeah, totally. Like they know that maybe the Tale of the Three Brothers, but I don't think that they're like, yeah, they're definitely going to be going after this because there happens to be one tiny little symbol associated with it. I think. Yeah. I had a brainwave of where the message from Dumbledore could be hidden.
Okay.
In the Horcrux books that Hermione summons out of Dumbledore's office.
See,
especially when she's like, I think he wanted me to have them.
Exactly.
Because I just summoned them and they flew out of his window. Like, Dumbledore, as if Dumbledore opened up a window before they left to go find the locket, was like, just in case I die, I'm going to open this window and take down a summoning enchantment on just these books. And then he's like, all right, Harry, I'm ready to go now.
See, I think honestly, one of Dumbledore's flaws is probably that he thinks he's being very clear, but he just disregards how much more intelligent he is than other people. Because a lot of the times he's like, Harry, can't you see? And Harry's like, no, I'm like really not following you at all. And he's like,
hey, dude, I'm 12.
So I think he probably thinks he was quite clear with the hints that he's been dropping. And as for why no one in the Ministry's picked it up, I think that's probably sort of twofold. A, it's the Ministry gearing up to full-blown war with Voldemort. They're just about to be overthrown. So how good is the Ministry really at doing anything at that point in time? When we know how good the Ministry is at any non-war time at doing anything. And then how good is the person, or how well was the person instructed who had to look through this? Was it just some random dude who was like, can you just double check there's no messages in this book? I mean,
is it like Angelina Johnson as an intern?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's just Jared Kushner. Just
great. Good on the ministry. Oh man, fantastic. Aurelia and the Doc, did you want to go over tone line, myth, reality, or do you feel like we already spoke on that?
The only thing I haven't said is that I think Hermione would not make a good chosen one.
Yeah, 100%.
Dumbledore would be like, so now we leave the firm surface of facts and go into the murky waters of mystery. And she'd be like, nope.
Nope, I'm out.
No, thank you.
As soon as she saw the Hall of Prophecy, she was like, I ain't afraid of no prophecy.
Yeah.
Just reductos the whole place before Ginny can. Oh, man, that's so funny. So, what I was alluding to earlier in the chapter summary is the Harry is a mad scientist moment. And I think you guys will get on board with this. It starts fairly gentle. Like, Ron is the one who's bringing up, hey, the Hallows can exist, actually. Like, look at Harry's cloak. And then Harry is kind of like he sort of looks up at the group with his eyebrows raising slowly, and he's like, oh yeah, look at my cloak.
I can't because it's invisible.
And I understand like why Harry is so tempted as the person who eventually has to be the one to face Voldemort. Neither can live while the other survives. You know, they'll be going at each other. He feels personally responsible. I can understand why he'd be like, man, if I could be master at death, I could go in against Voldemort. And like Hermione's being a bit clueless on this when she's denying him. But that doesn't mean that Harry doesn't like kind of go sideways with his reasonings. The next one, also fine. All right, so I have these on a mad scientist rating, an MS rating of 1 to 5. So, hey, the cloak exists, said by Ron, and Harry agrees. A mad scientist level 1. 1 being the least mad scientist-y. Like, all right, that's, you have evidence. Then, you know, there's the whole death stick thing. There's a quote here. You said there have been loads of ones, the death stick and whatever they were called. So like I see, you agree with me on that one, right?
Yeah, I agree. The stories of the death stick and whatever have been splashed across history. The idea of this wand existing is too loud to be hidden or to just be myth. So like there's contextual historical evidence that you can figure out that this thing is also real.
And I feel like Harry is not saying this thing is the most powerful thing in the world. He's just like, this could exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like Ollivander knows the Elder Wand exists, but doesn't know about the other Hallows. So like this one isn't like the wand itself isn't that wild of an idea because it seems like even Voldemort like knows the Elder Wand exists, but doesn't know about the other two, or doesn't care. I don't know, but like the idea of a death stick. You don't want to sell me death sticks.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to sell me death sticks.
Every time.
Every time. Then Henry goes home and rethinks his life, right after he finds out about the death stick. So, but that whole idea is not, the Elder Wand is not a crazy one in terms of how, like this one is clear and backed up by the wand guy, you know, more than anything.
Yeah. So there's evidence for sure. So again, more scientists than mad. And Aurelia, if you didn't know, that was a Star Wars reference.
Yeah, I was
there
like,
are drugs
whatever's
in the Star
happening,
Wars
I
universe
have no
called
idea.
death sticks. Yeah, it's a very famous scene in what is usually painted as one of the worst Star Wars movies, Attack of the Clones, where Obi-Wan Kenobi comes in and this guy tries to sell him death sticks, and he uses the Force to make him go home and rethink his life.
Okay.
So that was the context on that for our listeners and for our one Star Warsian not person. We start to tick up in mad scientist level just a bit, but it's still like Harry is still firmly being like, well, there's fact to back up that a resurrection E-type stone could exist. When he cites Cedric and company's echoey ghost form things in Goblet's climax, he says, when my wand connected with you-know-whos, it made my mom and dad appear and Cedric. But she, the girl in tail, didn't really come back, did she? The story says that once people are dead, they belong dead. And so, like, it seems plausible that somebody could take that magic and encase it somewhere else, kind of like you do with any other sort of magic.
Right. Yeah, I think I want to say that kind of the biggest argument to this is really Hermione's doubt on it. And I think her big problem is that people, you know, she's so focused on people can't come back, even though they're kind of saying like, well, they're not really coming back. And I almost wonder if this is just because she hasn't like lost anybody important enough to her. Like, Dumbledore lost Ariana, Harry's lost Lily and James and Sirius and Dumbledore himself. And if she had the potential to see somebody that she truly cared for in whatever limited form that would be, would she be more likely to believe in the possibility? Or would she still be firmly based in fact because she doesn't have a driving force that would like want her logical mind to give it a rest for a second and like accept the possibility of something a little bit more outlandish.
And you know what? I know ghosts are different, as in they haven't gone back and, you know, come back, as in they've just refused to move on. But still, ghosts are a thing that are very real in Hermione's world. Right. And, you know, she's constantly surrounded by them. Yeah. So why is the idea of like a ghostly-ish type figure of getting people back so outlandish for her?
Yeah, and even if you believe that, like, they're not quite a ghost, they're more like maybe a portrait or something like a copy, or if they're really part of that person but just not the full of that person, it seems like there's something else entirely because, you know, the girl in the tale, she's very despondent that she's not truly dead. She just keeps wanting to be... Like, she doesn't like this kind of, like, middle ground that she's in. It just reminded me, like, a half-life, a cursed life. Like,
yeah, totally.
It's very, like, that middle ground. And so I think, I just kind of wonder, like, where on the, like, echoes of a former person the resurrection stone creation, like, falls. Is it, like... less than a ghost? Is it more than a ghost because they have gone and come back? Is it like, where are they on that spectrum?
We meet them, and I think they're more than even the ghost has personality, because when Sirius and James and Lupin and everybody comes back for Harry, they are like, not only are they cognizant of like who they were, they are also cognizant of what he's done.
Right.
In a way that describes sort of whatever Rowling's afterlife is, that they have observational skills of what's going on Harry's plane of existence. Yeah. And so they seem like in some way, shape, or form, there is a loose magical connection between here and the afterlife where an imprint can be drawn out, sort of like ink dripping into oil. You can extract it by itself.
And also they don't, you know, they come back in different appearance than Harry knows them. You know, Remus and Sirius both look younger than Harry's known them.
Right. Almost like in their best forms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because in a lot of like other things, ghosts come back. Like when ghosts are left behind, it's not as you were when you died. Like some of them as you were when you died, and some are like as your best self, basically. So it's like, and then also ones where you like go on somewhere. You don't necessarily like, maybe it's heaven or an afterlife or whatever, but you don't like get to heaven and you're 90 years old. You get to heaven and you're, 30 or whatever. You like envision yourself as like the best of you. So it's interesting that the resurrection stone seems to work in that way, whereas ghosts are very like the way you were the moment you died.
The minute you died.
The second you died, that is exactly bloodstains and all like that is
had barely held on.
That is how you are.
Yeah.
So I just
Nearly
think
Headless
that's very
Nick's
interesting.
whole deal he wasn't most proud of himself right when
His
on
best
the
moment,
58th blow of the axe. Yeah. This is the best moment of my life. I'm going to choose to live nearly headless.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. To your point, Sierra, about like Hermione not buying in. This is another thing that when Christian was talking about Hermione being full of fear, like Harry literally tells us in the description of the chapter, oh, he scared her with his talk of dead people coming back to life.
Mm-hmm.
And Hermione seems well versed in, okay, ghosts do exist, and she's probably read 1,000 books on them, and you can be immortal, but no spell can bring the dead back. No one can come back to life. And she's firmly planting herself in the ground. But for whatever reason, this fear is blocking her from seeing the very clear logic that Harry points out, and you've also hit on, Sierra, which is the whole, like, they're not really alive, though. They're not back. They
Right.
seem more like this thing that happened with Lily and James and Cedric and Frank.
Right. I'm almost wondering if her fear is not necessarily about the dead coming back, but about Harry's potential obsession with the dead
Yes.
coming back.
100%.
Because
Because of the archway.
Before, like, you know, the Mirror of Eris said, he spent night after night sitting there staring at the dead. Like,
Yeah.
I think...
And the archway, remember? She tries to get him, and Ginny tries really hard too. They get really freaked out by how much Harry
wants
is
to
at
go.
the archway in the ministry where Sirius falls through. For the listeners, if you're not caught up, Sirius falls through that archway.
What do you mean, listeners? You're not
to
caught
death.
up. We are literally 2 books on
7.
from that.
If you
I'm saying that was a foolish way for me to phrase that. That's very true. I kept saying the archway, and I wanted to make sure people knew what I meant in the listening.
The veil.
with the veil in the death room.
Okay,
in the
so in
Department of
case you guys
Mysteries.
didn't read book 5, 6, or 7, here's what happened. At the very beginning of book... No, I'm kidding. That would be crazy. It's an 18-hour-long podcast.
Mr. and Mrs. Vernon Dursley of number 4 Perfect Dress.
I don't think that us as a podcast, we could summarize 6 books worth in 18 hours. I think it would take us way longer.
Oh my gosh, no way.
Sam could.
Oh, well, I don't know. Sam, your chapter summaries.
I think I
If
can do
we
it in less
chapter
than 18
summary every chapter, it's possible.
And played at 2 times speed.
Yeah, it would be less than 18 hours. Yeah, do the Christian for it. Yeah, but I mean, to your point, I think that's a really good reading of that character, Sierra, with how much Hermione probably knows about the Mirror of Eris. He never directly talks to her about it, but
Right.
how much she gets scared by Harry's fixation on the Arch of Death.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good read on that character. Her being afraid of Harry getting
And
obsessed.
isn't there another... Gosh, it's like I have the memory right on the... Right
Well,
there,
he also
and I just can't reach it.
keeps
But
looking in the mirror, and hoping to see a glint. It's like, is that Dumbledore? Is Dumbledore back? So there is an obsession a little bit with death and bringing people
death,
back.
people coming back.
Yeah.
and he thinks he sees his father, but it's really him in
Right.
Prisoner.
Prisoner of Azkaban.
Totally.
And so
No.
there's like a theme of Hermione watching Harry be like, this person who's dead, they're alive. And she's like, Harry, no.
I have never once thought about this particular thing, but you're so right. Harry is a bit like, oh my God, hey, are they still alive? Which, like, I if you lost your parents and never met them and then grew up in the way that Harry did, I'd probably too be like, oh my God, magic, great, cool, they're back somehow.
Yeah. I can interact with them. I can have them back in some way. I can, whatever the case may be.
He's just a big
think
Marvel
that's-
fan
yeah.
who has seen all these characters come back after supposedly dying, and that's all it is. Like, is that Bucky?
Nobody
Like,
really
yeah.
That's so fun. Yeah, he's read all of Dudley's comics.
Exactly.
That Dudley's thrown out because he doesn't read. I didn't know you could read. Sorry, that's not even to Dudley. Okay, so for going up in the mad scientist level, we have this next thing. Harry ends up being right on all of this, and I want to be clear that I don't think it's completely devoid of fact. It's more of like the way that this is appearing to Ron and Hermione.
Right.
So, like, yes, the cloak exists. Level 1, the wand exists. Level 1. Level 2, the resurrection stone exists maybe because of this thing, and ghosts exist and all that stuff. Okay, sure. And then he's like, Dumbledore had my cloak the night my parents died. He wanted to examine it because he thought it was the third Hallow. And it's like, all right, cool. There's some logical thinking going on. Your firm and fast belief and the way that you're just being like, I've got it. Here it is like, that's where I'm like, whoa, bud, you got to pull back on the reins a little bit. Mm-hmm. You can't just present information like that.
I thought of a really good analogy with this when I was reading through that, like, Harry essentially just became vegan, and like he has all the logic and he's totally right. And like everyone's like, yeah, you're right. I should be vegan. It would really help, but like I'm not gonna do it. But like, you know, like, and that's kind of how I see it. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm recycling, but I really shouldn't be. You know, like factory farming's bad. You know, like this is that's where it is. Like he's like, why aren't you doing it, guys? It's clearly the right way. It's like that's the best analogy I could come up with. That like he's figured it out, but it's like, I don't want to, you know. So
yeah. Nobody. It's too much, too soon, too fast.
Exactly.
To quote the Grinch.
Yeah.
Oh man, it is a leap though, and it is frustrating that he can't see it because he knows that Hermione needs information to be presented in a specific way. Ron, I don't really, and I don't think Harry gives much of a flip about in terms of the way that you present information, but like he's trying to convince Hermione.
See, I think convincing Ron is going to be easy if he has convinced Hermione.
Right.
Yeah. Like, especially with Ron's new, like, the 12th way to charm this witch is to agree with everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's numbers 1 through 12, actually.
The book is really expensive.
It's 1 page. Yeah.
Everything she says, you are so correct.
Oh, man. You're so right. That's so funny. Oh, man. It is. Does anybody have any speculation as to why Dumbledore needs to have the cloak in his hand, though?
Probably to test it, because I think that there's a whole part of the cloak being impervious to all, like, it works no matter what magic is thrown at it. Yeah. Endures eternally, giving constant and impenetrable concealment no matter what spells are cast at it. So I think he's probably casting a bunch of spells to see if he can get through the enchantment of the cloak. And when he's exhausted everything that he knows about other things that can get past other invisibility cloaks, then he knows that it's the true one. So it's got to be able to do all of that testing.
Honest question. Do you think that Dumbledore grabbed a spider, threw it underneath the cloak, and then Avada Kedavra the cloak to see if it works like that?
No.
Well, so I think so.
Okay.
I just reread this, but he says the reason he took the cloak, he took it out of curiosity or vain curiosity, but it never could have worked for me the way it works for you, its true owner. And that was kind of interesting. That he just took it because he was curious. Is this the one? Does it actually work? But then it wouldn't have worked for me because I'm not the true owner, which I thought.
So they have an allegiance. So it has an allegiance as well.
Yeah, the cloak chooses the wizard.
That's fascinating. So, but the resurrection stone doesn't seem to have that.
No.
Well, the third brother is smarter than we know that the third brother is a lot smarter than the other two.
Right.
Because the oldest brother doesn't like fingerprint lock the trigger on his elder wand.
No, but the elder one changes allegiance, and the cloak changes allegiance. So my then logical conclusion would be, well, wouldn't the stone need to have some allegiance in order to work properly?
The cloak doesn't really change allegiance, though, because the cloak just gets passed down. Yeah,
or not allegiance, but like but both the cloak and the wand accept a true owner.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's very true. The resurrection stone chooses the owner depending on who's carrying it, because when you roll it, it rolls out your dead people.
Right.
Yeah.
And because
So it's kind of an owner, but if you just like
Okay, so but who did the stone
But
if
it's real
if someone
fickle.
just borrowed it, they probably could use it.
yeah.
who did the stone belong to? It was Gaunt, and then
Yeah.
is it Voldemort, and then does Harry inherit it from Voldemort when he tries to kill him as a baby? And so Harry's also the rightful owner of that. I'm trying to just think of like maybe it does pass.
But Dumbledore is the one who collects the stone.
But does he see Ariana?
Well, he tries, and that's why he loses his arm.
Yeah.
Because it is still a Horcrux at that moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is also, like, at that point, Dumbledore has 2 out of the 3 Hallows as he owns them, and he knows where the third one is.
Right.
Yeah.
But he has already done the whole testing of, the cloak doesn't really belong to me. So even though I know where all 3 of them are right this moment in time, I cannot be the master of death.
Okay, hold on. Harry is the true owner of the cloak. It could never really work for Dumbledore. So does that mean that that a descendant of the third Peverell brother is the only one who could be master of death?
I think that's the intimation then. Yeah.
Interesting. So Voldemort never really could be either.
Yeah. Unless, one of the Peverell line didn't have kids and passed it on to someone else. But I think there has to be intention in giving it to someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And because Dumbledore was just a mediator, it didn't actually pass to him from James before getting to Harry.
Because, Dumbledore just held on to it. Right. But it's quite funny because Dumbledore at any given point in time has access to 2 or 3. Because he long has the Elder Wand. He holds on to the invisibility cloak for a while before he gives it to Harry. And then he does actually have the resurrection stone and knows where the cloak is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I hope somebody puts together a little comic at some point about Dumbledore being like, "Hey Harry, bring your cloak."
Everywhere.
And he just comes in and he just holds the wand and the stone and Harry's cloak and just sits there. And Harry's like, "Professor?" And he's like, no, hold on. What are you doing? I'm enjoying this moment.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like in book 6, Dumbledore at the beginning says, "Always bring your cloak everywhere." And that's also when he has the other 2 Hallows.
True.
Yeah.
He's
So
wearing
they're always
the Halloween
within close proximity.
Yeah.
That's
Together we are the master of death, Harry. And then he dies.
In Dumbledore's portrait, he happened to align the 3 in the background, and no one noticed. But the cloak is behind the wand, behind the ring, perfectly encapsulating just like the original Instagram picture of.
But no one can see that they like Dumbledore when the portrait was being painted was like, make an invisibility cloak there, and the guy's like, how? So then we get to Mad Scientist level 4, where Harry really feels like he's going off the rails in here. He just goes, "He's my ancestor." Speaking of the third Peverell brother, "I'm descended from the third brother. It all makes sense." And "it all makes sense" is the harbinger of mad scientist language.
Yeah, definitely. It's that is like the key. It's like, he's my ancestor. I'm descended from the third brother. He could then like go on some sort of like genealogy spiel or something like that. But then just being like, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
That harkens back to Chamber of Secrets. Spiders flee before it. It all makes sense.
It all makes sense. Yeah, but that was
As
because
if everything
he had
has
an
just been
actual
spelled out
page.
very clearly, and no.
Very clearly. Like, if he had said, well, hey, this Peverell's, Ignatius Peverell's grave is in the town of Godric Hollow, where my lineage comes from. Like, the Potters have lived there forever and ever and ever and ever. I wonder if I might be a descendant of the third brother. So much better, not mad scientisty at all, but I'm descended. It all makes sense. It's not on the level, bud.
Yeah, because he just goes straight from Ignotus Peverell's buried in Godric's Hollow. He's my ancestor. It's like, okay, well, hold on. There's like 2 steps at least in the middle there.
And
I think, the only logical leap, like, in his thought process here is that in the story, the cloak is passed down from father to son. Yeah. So if we're operating under the, albeit accurate, assumption that the cloak is the cloak, then that should be the only way logically for Harry to have it in his possession. So, like, if we're operating under that assumption, I'll bring your mad scientist level down to a 3. But Ron and Hermione, like, need that. They can't do the leap between one to the other.
And especially if we're going back to considering that Hermione's already scared because she's considering Harry's maybe a bit too obsessed with dead people. Now he's thrown a whole new generation of dead people in there. She's like, what now?
Well, and the reason why it's an MS4 for me instead of an MS3 is because it's the way that Hermione and Ron are seeing it happening, not what's going on in Harry's head. It's just the way it's being presented. And also, it can't have passed from every father to every son because we have a last name change in there in a very strict English sort of, hey, son, daughters always change their name. So at some point, there was only a daughter left in the direct line from Ignatius to Harry. Well, and it got changed.
Mm-hmm. But even so, I mean, I think that's mentioned that, like, it went from father to son, mother to daughter, like, type thing. It did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, because we know that the Peverell as a name, because they mention it, that Hermione says she borrowed it from the book on Nature's Nobility.
Yeah.
Nature's Nobility.
That's extinct in the male line. Yeah.
Yeah, they were one of the
But
earliest
also, what do you
families.
do if you have more than one child?
Yeah, apparently give it to your cousin? I don't know.
I think it's always the, if you have more than one child, it's just the eldest, like any sort of
maybe Ignatius
nobility lineage.
The opposite of cursed his line, but protected it in some way, which is why James and Lily were able to survive Voldemort 3 times because they had to have a kid before they could die.
Or there used to be 7 Hallows, and 4 of them just aren't no longer because they just stopped passing them down because they didn't have kids.
Yeah. And then my last mad scientist rating. This is when we get truly bonkers. Where Harry, like, there's something in the ring. We know that Dumbledore gave it to him to conceal something, but Harry just like whips out the snitch, and it's just like, it's in here. He left me the ring. It's in the snitch. This is the eureka moment. Like, it's so crazy. It's like he's like, I know it. It's right here. I can practically see it. Like, there's nothing to back it up whatsoever. And Harry's got to know what that looks like in some way, shape, or form. But he's just gone from like, well, yeah, they could exist, kind of like a pretty calm conversation, to like, Dumbledore knew it. And I'm the descendant, and it's right here. We've had it all along.
Yeah, I think the absolute most bonkers part of this part specifically is he's 100% right.
Yeah.
Usually, like, when Harry goes off on his wild accusations, like, he's off track, he's accusing the wrong person, he's obsessed with the wrong thing. But here he gets literally every part of it correct. And so I'm like, could there be some sort of like Hallows intuition, because he is in possession of 2 of them. He's the rightful owner of the cloak. Like, is there some sort of like draw, like the Hallows want to be united, and so they're calling, they're letting Harry know that he's right, and they're right here, and you just need to get the wand, because then he gets some sort of like, they mention when he starts thinking about the wand, or a little bit earlier than this, he starts like dwelling on it and like almost like craving it, and so it's almost like, do they want to be united? Like,
Are you saying he's Sauron to the ring?
Yes. There's enough mentions, I think, yes.
The thing is, though, that Harry becomes master of death without ever holding the Elder Wand.
Right.
Yeah, just because he has ownership of it.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that he, it was only, I like the whole I open at the close and that he says I'm ready to die, but that's the going off of the story, like greeting death as a friend in a way. And I thought that was interesting, that he only becomes master of death once he has the humility to be like, okay, I'm going to go die now. And I mean, maybe it's greeting death as a friend. There's probably still fear there, but I liked that parallel with the story. And I think that was a really cool way of writing it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I had, a mini Harry as a mad scientist. So this is my part 2. Where he's talking about the ring in particular.
Trying to prove
and he goes,
if it's the Hallow
trying
or
to
not,
prove that the ring is the Hallow, so that the gaunt ring that, Marvolo thinks is just this Slytherin heirloom, or this, Slytherin lineage heirloom is actually the Hallow. He goes from, maybe there's a few scratches on the ring, okay? Mad Scientist 1, maybe there's a few scratches. Sure, I can get behind that. Cool. And then, why not? Well, why couldn't it be the symbol? I'm going to bump that up to a Mad Scientist 3 because there's no leap in logic there. There's just a leap. There's no logic in there whatsoever.
Just opinion.
And then he goes straight to, I know the sign was on that stone. It's like, okay, calm down, Harry, my boy. But then again, you can't fault a guy for being 100% correct, though. Like, there may not be any logic there, but darn if he's not right.
It reminds me, have any of you seen The Good Place?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, it reminds me of the one guy who got everything right about the afterlife.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Ted Danson's character is like, just one night he took a bunch of edibles and suddenly he started spouting off and got everything right. Like that's kind of Harry's vibe right now.
And look where that guy ended up. He was like willfully unhappy, just doing his darndest to try to live within the rules. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then we talk a lot about this, but Hallows versus Horcruxes is something that Harry really debates after this. It's on his mind for a good long while in terms of what should he go after? Because just like as Sierra said, Hermione cannot do two things. She can go to multiple classes in a single day, but only because the time turner allows her to do that. And Harry apparently can't do that either. He just needs to think about which one should he go for. And I think part of that is because Voldemort, he knows, is after the Elder Wand, which freaks him out.
Yeah, I mean, that would be terrifying. You know that this thing exists in history. He's been searching for it. He's seeking the wand. And that would be pretty terrifying if if the legend of this wand is that it's unbeatable, would be pretty rough.
Well, and then this is I think it's right after Dobby dies that when he's digging and he comes to a resolution of who he needs to talk to first, whether he's going to talk to Griphook or talk to Ollivander. And it's like, if he talks to Griphook, he's going the Horcrux route. He's talking to Ollivander, he's going the Hallows route, and he decides to do the Horcrux route despite having all this. And it's like he needed the perspective of Dobby dying in order to make that decision and go, okay, I'm going Horcruxes, because that's going to make the big difference. And yeah, my friends were right, despite me also being right. So yeah, that's kind of a cool way that it resolves itself later on after he does that thinking.
Yeah. Aureo, you've got a point here on Harry's so good understanding how Voldemort works.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting if you remember in book 5 when we're introduced to Harry and Voldemort's connection, and obviously that whole fiasco, to quote Dumbledore, of Dumbledore being like, I'll just ignore you and send your worst teacher to teach you how to protect you from this. But ultimately, by book 7, we know that this connection is crucial. And, you know, if Harry had learned occlumency, it definitely would have hurt him at this point, because he needs to have that connection with Voldemort, especially because it seems that he's much more in control of it than Voldemort is, which is quite interesting considering that Voldemort is definitely more skilled at both occlumency and legitimacy. Mm-hmm. But it is clear that without that connection, that they would be doomed. And I think this is the point in Deathly Hallows when it gets. This is potentially almost another mad scientist level moment where Harry suddenly gets incredibly good at fully understanding what Voldemort is doing at any point in time. He's like suddenly he just like knows everything through just that connection of, which is not, you know, full flesh thoughts. It's just like emotions and how Voldemort's feeling. And Harry's like, oh, he's mad because that. Oh, he's happy because that. And it's just, he knows Voldemort so well.
I think that culminates in when he's like, oh, yeah, he would have put it at Hogwarts because he would have thought he was the only one who opened up the room of requirement, which is like a leap. And he's not wrong, but he seems to have this almost not quite understood on the page still connection to understanding Voldemort at that in-depth level like you're talking about.
And I do think, you know, I don't agree with Sierra's thing about the Hallows want to be reunited, but I do think the shards of soul in Voldemort want to be reunited. So I think it is very much the Horcrux in Harry that is like, I know where my siblings are, basically.
Yeah. Fascinating.
But yeah, this is the turning point for me with Harry becoming incredibly good suddenly, and now I think it was Christian had this point earlier. It's like he's turning into the leader that they need for the rest of the book.
Mm-hmm. He goes. It's essentially he almost hits like God mode for a little bit, not in terms of talent, but just in terms of like detection and the mystery aspect of these novels, where he just is like kind of left and right naming all the right things.
Well, and I think the point I made was about Ron, but it is Harry as well, and I think it's interesting, like when they go back to Hogwarts and Ron hasn't stopped the whole like drive that he has, and I think it's when they go back and they're like, "How can we help you, Harry?" And Harry's like, "No, you're not going to do it." And Ron's like, "No, let's let them help us. Let's let them help us find something." Yeah. And then it all goes from there. And then while Harry's going with Luna, Ron's like, "Wait, let's go down to the Chamber of Secrets." Like suddenly there's this drive from everyone. Hey, let's go do this. It's really cool to see. And but I think this chapter is the turning point. It didn't used to be one of my favorite chapters, but now it is.
It certainly really builds the rest of this book up in a very satisfying way. Mm-hmm. I think this speaks a little bit to what I was talking about earlier with my frustrations around Dumbledore. There is a quote in here with, as Harry is sort of convinced about doing the Hallows and Hermione is acting as the naysayer. She says, if the Deathly Hallows really existed and Dumbledore knew about them, knew that the person who possessed all three of them would be the Master of Death, Harry, why wouldn't he have told you? Why? Which is a good question.
It's a fair question, but like I think there's a couple of things here. So it has I will give slight credence to the fact that it has always puzzled me a bit why Dumbledore let Harry go down the Hallows road, like knowing how similar they are, how addicting the quest for the Hallows can be. Like, I get that, you know, Dumbledore wanted Harry to be better than he was.
I disagree with how similar they are.
Well, in terms of like, let's win, let's be Master of Death, let's see our...
completely
they
disagree.
both think that the resurrection... I mean, like, they both think the resurrection stone's, like, the most important. Like, I think I just think that, like, Dumbledore understanding how Harry is.
Yeah, but Dumbledore
understands
is a dangerous
how
Harry really is. And because Dumbledore's seen an 11-year-old Harry Potter stand in front of the mirror of Erised and asking for it to get the stone, not to have it, but to hide it. And I think that's the difference, the crucial difference between Dumbledore and Harry.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's enough of a difference. And I think the reason why he lets Harry go down the Hallows route is threefold. One, twofold, actually. One, if Harry can get the wand before Voldemort does, that would be good. And B, and I think this is the most important one, Dumbledore gives Harry a tool to help him cope with facing death on his own, which I think is a huge kindness. And that resurrection stone ends up being immensely important. Not from a plot standpoint, but from a character standpoint, for Harry to feel comforted and to help him with his courage in stepping forward. Because Harry probably still goes and does it on his own, but man, is he feeling emboldened when the resurrection stone helps. So he doesn't just like realize he's about to die, go, oh, that's what the snitch is, and say, I'm about to die, and then the stone rolls out and he goes, huh. And then just kicks it away, walks forward to death.
Something that comes to me with this is one reason he doesn't just plain tell him outright is it's a quote, I think, from the first book, but in Tales of Beedle the Bard, it's kind of in the intro that the Rowling gives us, that truth is a beautiful and terrible thing and should therefore be treated with great caution. And it's like, even though this is the truth about, okay, this is the thing, it needs to be come at with a bit of caution, with a bit of hesitance, or else you're going to go down crazy rabbit holes with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason that it's more of a quest thing that you need to discover on your own, rather than just being told forthright.
It harkens back to Dumbledore's placement of Harry at the Dursleys. He's all about the right time, when he's ready. Wouldn't it be better to grow away from all that and enter our world when he's ready? And that's how Dumbledore treats sort of everything. I think you're really pushing on the right idea here, Christian, where the truth is revealed slowly, tepidly, cautiously, and with the proper time, or else. And even here, Harry is maybe going to give up his hunt for the Horcruxes because he found out about the Hallows. So
I think it is such
right.
a fragile balance between the Horcruxes are more important because they need to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And this is why Dumbledore focuses his lessons on that. And then I think you're right, Sam, this is a kindness to Harry. This is if you manage to solve this quest for the Hallows, which I am giving you 2 basically into your lap by, like, you have the snitch and you have the invisibility cloak. And also Harry was there when Dumbledore was disarmed. So, he has an incredible leg up in possibly succeeding in it. But to my point earlier, they can still be successful in vanquishing Voldemort, but Harry dies. And this is Dumbledore's, if you manage to solve this quest, but it is a quest and you need to solve it, then you can choose to come back. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's I kept coming across this when I was reading this chapter a few times for this, but the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death, which is I think it's from the Bible, but it's also on I believe it's on the Peverell tombstone. Is that right? Is it Peverell or
yes.
Is it, okay.
Yeah.
And
it's on Ignatius's tombstone.
Yeah, and that when Harry sees it, he's like, "Well, that's a Death Eater idea, isn't it?"
Isn't it on
and then Hermione
Potter tombstone?
I think it might be the Potter one. I think you're right, Aurelia.
Yeah.
And that he's like, "This is a Death Eater idea," and then Hermione's like, "No, it's not. This is about overcoming death in a different way." And I think that's the lesson that Harry needs to learn, and I think is kind of learned in this chapter. I can't really tell, but it's kind of interesting that quote keeps coming up throughout the book.
Through all of this, Harry also starts to have his scar prickling. Ever since Godric's Hollow, he's gotten little little flashes of what's going on with Voldemort, which he even doesn't even allude to. He straight up said like he's kind of proud of it and he really likes his little insights no matter what he tells Hermione. But the connection is being really strange. To quote here, the only other thing that mattered to him, other than the Hallows, was that his scar had begun to prickle again. The visions he and Voldemort were sharing had changed in quality. They had become blurred, shifting as though they were moving in and out of focus. Used to image sharp as reality, Harry was disconcerted by the change. He was worried that the connection between himself and Voldemort had been damaged, a connection that he both feared and, whatever he told Hermione, prized. But why? Why do you think the connection is being so weird? I know it's been silent for a while because Voldemort is doing occlumency against Harry. But now, is just Voldemort too weakened by losing the locket? Is he just losing focus? Why do we think this connection is strange?
I think that I don't know, because I at one point I was thinking, okay, is this Horcruxes? Is this? But later on, the connection is so strong, and I wonder if it's just that Voldemort doesn't have any huge emotional things going on. Because it seems like that's when the connection is strong, is when when he's angry or when he's really into whatever he's doing, and right now he's kind of just flitting about trying to figure out what's going on with the Elder Wand, and I don't think that there's as much of a drive as he's going. I don't know. I'm trying to remember where Voldemort actually is at this point, but I just think he's not emotionally. His emotions aren't high right now, and so there's not a big connection.
Is it maybe that Harry almost unconsciously is doing occlumency by being so focused on the Hallows?
Ooh, that's cool.
Oh, fascinating. I love that theory.
Yeah, he's super focused.
Very possibly.
I mean, it's maybe not exactly clear your mind, but it's at least focused. I don't know.
So every time Voldemort peeks in, he's just seeing a wand, a cloak, and a stone. He's like, what the heck?
My theory was always just like the weakening the whole kind of weakens the individual. And so the more Horcruxes they destroy, like the harder it is, first of all, for Voldemort to hold on to like blocking Harry out. Because I feel like it's like both at the same time, like weakening the whole weakens the individual. So it's harder for Voldemort to like block Harry out because the weakening the whole is also drawing the rest of the parts together. So like he can't keep up his occlumency to keep Harry out because the part that's in Harry and the part that's in Voldemort want to be connected. But at the same time, the connection is still really weak because each of those parts are also weakening because of the damage to the whole. That was kind of my thought. Is that it's a little bit of both where like now we're like halfway done with all of the pieces that are out there. So like if half of your soul is destroyed by now, like that would cause issues with like the rest of it because they exist in their strength in like that's why he made more than one was because he thought it would be stronger that way. So then like the more that he loses, the weaker that system is going to be.
So do you think that those pieces of his soul still give him strength in some way or shape or form, even though they're separated out?
I think so. I think in some way, and when they're and I think that it becomes more impactful like when there's fewer of them because like as we know, like he can't tell when the earlier ones have been destroyed. Like he can't feel it, but once the later ones are starting to be destroyed, then he's like, oh, someone knows.
But does he feel it? Because I know he does in the movies, but I think he just finds out.
I don't think he does in the books.
I don't know if
he finds out and then goes on a tear.
And I sometimes wonder, or have wondered since reading this book for the first time, that it's like, could there be like 7 Voldemorts existing at once if they all got... I don't know. You know what I mean? Like how does Horcruxing work? could one raise them all?
Is it like chopping up a starfish where each little bit becomes its own starfish?
Right.
Well, I don't think so, because there's a piece in Harry, but Harry doesn't become Voldemort, and there's a piece in Nagini, but Nagini doesn't become Voldemort.
But the diary almost becomes a full Voldemort by sucking out Ginny's soul.
Yeah, but I think the whole point is it needs a full entity. And also the diary was the only one that was really Voldemort to begin with, because it's his thoughts and memories and feelings and everything. So that's the only one that was close enough to actually being a real Voldemort.
Yeah, true. Versus the other stuff was just bits of his soul, but not memories to attach on.
So what would the point be then of dividing it up? Like,
you can die six times without actually dying.
But see, when he got blasted by the Avada Kedavra curse, his soul still remained. It's just his body left. So then, yeah. Christian, your question now has me questioning things.
How many baby Voldies could they find? And I don't know. I'm just trying to think about how it all works. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it works like this. Because you've tethered your soul to the earth, your soul cannot leave the earth. And he did it 7 times to ensure that even if one got destroyed and then somebody tried to kill him, he'd still be alive. I think that's the simple answer to all of this. So that's why he gets to still remain, is because his soul is still there. It's interesting to think about it in terms of like each time you destroy a soul. If he's at a level 99 and Harry's at a level 42, trying to get Voldemort down to a level that he can play with, that destroying each Horcrux sort of de-levels him. That's where my major question is like, are these pieces of soul giving him magical strength, or is that in his blood?
I don't think they give him strength.
And his physiology.
This is like a whole episode,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the short answer for me is no. And I think the only reason why Harry has ever had a chance of winning that duel against Voldemort is because Voldemort's using a wand that Harry has the allegiance over.
Yeah, true. Okay, cool. It's decided then. We should probably do an episode on it at some point. Moving on, we do get a bit of a break from all of this sort of shenanigans and brooding and sullenness for a moment of, hey, we haven't gotten very many Happy Burrow moments whatsoever with the Weasleys because we've been camping and Ron's been a little bit of a pouty boy. And so we get Potter Watch, which helps to resolve some lingering anti-Lupin feelings and gives us a little bit of fun and joy. So, Aurelia, I'll ask you the question that you've written here. Do you like the name Potter Watch?
I thought it was a bit too obvious, but then I guess...
On the nose?
But then I guess I have also not lived through like a wartime where you have to, communicate in secret. So maybe in that scenario, it would be sort of almost like a nostalgic, nice feeling type thing.
It is hard to talk about it in public, though. Like, you couldn't be like at the pub and being like, "Hey, did you listen to Potter Watch?"
But then I mean, we will probably talk about this in a bit. But like, I also don't understand why they use code names when the broadcast itself is already so protected, and you can't just,
Yeah.
And just because you know who's doing the broadcast, which also not hard to guess who those people are, that doesn't mean they're immediately in danger, because all of these people are already in danger anyway.
Totally.
Well, not all of them.
Lee's not in danger.
Kingsley isn't. Isn't he still undercover at this point?
I thought not, but I honestly don't know.
I think he's fully fighting the Ministry. He's left.
He was the one who he said Voldemort's name at one point, and so they all sprang on him, and so now he's on the run. That's how Ron knows that the name is actually cursed, because
of Kingsley.
Yeah,
okay.
Because of Kingsley.
Also, his last assignment was to protect the Muggle Prime Minister, and I don't think a Voldemort-run government cares about that.
And he also sent them the Lynx message being like, "Hey, Ministry Fallen, they're coming." So I wondered if he was still under, but no. At this point, he's on the run, which is good to know. Sierra and Christian, did you guys like the title?
I did. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean,
I thought it was fun.
there's ChatGPT could probably come up with 10 more for us, but I think Potter Watch is good for what they had.
Nice. Really, to answer your question about like the code names, I think so. The broadcast is very protected, which makes sense, but somebody still might get into there, and so I think you're trying to hide everybody's identity from potential, from people potentially trying to come and kill you for running an illegal radio broadcast. But my point is those code names are like stupidly bad. So we've got Lee Jordan on the podcast, on the radio show, Kingsley on the radio show, Remus on the radio show, and Fred on the radio show, as told to us by Ron. But I guess we might never know completely if it was Fred or George. The thing is that, okay, River for Jordan, like the River Jordan, Royal for Kingsley, Romulus for Remus, and they try and go with Rodent for Fred. And Fred is smartly like, no, I want to be Rapier, which has nothing to do with him, versus Rodent for the Weasley Weasel of the Weasley type, is silly and stupid. Now, the Death Eaters might not know River Jordan. They might not be able to guess that, but they might. And Rapier is a good one, but calling him Rodent is like, oh, maybe he's a like, it's still guessable, but none of, like, Royal for Kingsley's bad. Nothing's worse than Romulus, though.
And see,
yeah, that one's awful.
I think the Death Eaters know of Remus, and regardless of what happens, Remus is in absolute danger. So I still don't get the code names because they can't. None of these people can walk out on the street. They all have to be in hiding anyway. So why can't you just call each other's name?
Except for Lee.
They're having fun.
And Fred. They're both allowed to be.
I'm sorry, but you know
thing.
Pooh? I'm sure Voldemort would be happy.
Yes, his shops is still running. He's still going about his daily life. All the Weasleys are. That's why they're hiding Ron.
None of them are working anymore at this point.
They're doing it out of Molly's out of the house, right? They're doing it all by mail.
Yeah.
Instead of having the actual shop open.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
But even so, I mean, I think they're just having fun with the names. It's like, yeah, look, I'm River. I don't think I don't think there's much. I mean, because it's not like there's like really good due process with all of this in terms of how Voldemort's government. Maybe Umbridge might take exception to like, oh well, they did. It wasn't him. It wasn't Lee Jordan. It was River. Like I don't think they're.
Umbridge would do that though. So
yeah.
I like Sierra though that you thought of what George's nickname would have been if.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something because it couldn't be like, because I was thinking like, well, it could be like hamster or something, but that's also just another rodent. So like rodent is too all encompassing. So I was like, well, this is the 90s. Like George Michael was still fairly relevant, right? Like it could have been Michael.
Yeah. I was thinking he might be called the Pope because of his saintly joke from earlier. About being holy.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. But aside from the code names being ridiculous, we do get a lovely little message from Lupin here, where Lee asks him, what would you tell Harry if he was listening, which, you know, he is. I tell him we're all with him in spirit, and I tell him to follow his instincts, which are good and nearly always right.
What's funny is that he does that every time he comes on the radio broadcast, just in case Harry's listening. So all the regular listeners are real bored by it.
The last time that Lupin saw him, though, was like when Harry just chewed him out. And so I think this is like,
chewed him out,
like you're right. I need to be with my family. I'm being selfish. And so I think he's trying to do his best to repent here. And I mean, and then at the same time, I think I said something like that. Ron and Hermione should have heard that and been like, okay, maybe the Hallows is right. Like, you know, that's the
See, but Hermione listened to the nearly always.
Yeah, nearly.
Right?
That's right. She does say nearly.
It's not.
Yeah.
No, I think this is clearly the repentance part. I'm making fun of the convenience of it, that it just happens to be the one that Harry listens to for the first time and the first mention that we get. So that's what my joke about, like, actually, Remus has done this every single radio broadcast.
Just in case.
To be fair, it's not impossible to guess that Harry might eventually listen, because Ron knows about it through his family. And so they assume Ron has managed to find them again. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were also off the air for a little bit.
Exactly.
That's true. For a long time, yeah, because Death Eaters came calling to their homes.
Or in the neighborhood, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I also like the call to protect Muggles in the podcast. I think that's really Kingsley's whole advice is just really sweet, and it's like, and then I love the foreshadowing, like, I'll elect you as Minister of Magic, and then like, he's the one to become Minister of Magic immediately after everything. But just
Lee was the only one to cast the vote.
Yeah.
Not to go all Irvin, but why the heck is Hagrid throwing a pro Harry Potter potty in his cabin?
No idea. Honestly, that's like the most wild. He's lasted this long.
It's the most like Irvin proving point part of Hagrid I think I can find. Like, Hagrid does a lot of stupid stuff, but this is the most blatantly like, hey, fool, stop.
If anything, it's like it doesn't even fit with Hagrid's character. Like, he's way more cautious than this. So yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't really have that many people over to his cabin that much.
Yeah, it's mostly the
like,
3 people that are on the run that are coming to his cabin.
You know who would throw a support Harry Potter party, though? At
the
Hogwarts
Creevies?
at this time.
Yeah.
Colin Creevy?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Dobby.
Yeah.
If he was there instead, he would be throwing this party. Maybe he convinced Hagrid to throw the party.
It might have even just been like a little tea with some people, and that Dobby did a bunch of huge decorations without telling anybody.
The only good reason for doing that for me is like if you were already planning to run away and you want to go out with a bang, it's like sort of Weasley-esque exit.
Hagrid's getting really tired of grading and is like, you know what?
Well, I like what you said earlier. Like, whereas the Weasleys, their big thing to go out at the bang is like a huge fireworks and all that. But Hagrid's big thing is a small party at his house. Like, just like the epitome of Hagrid is that. That's funny.
To answer your question, Sierra, about how does Lupin and Lee know about Grupp? He was at the funeral for Dumbledore, so I think everybody knows about him.
I was like, I could have sworn
he's now an assistant for his class.
Yeah, I was like, I know he's shown, like, he doesn't stay in the forest all of Half-Blood. So I was like, but at what point would those specific people like figure it out? But I guess at the funeral he would have been around all of these people. So
actually, he's not even in the forest at all in Half-Blood, because over the summer, Dumbledore finds him a cave.
Right.
Yeah.
I am currently rereading the book. That's why I know.
But I mean, like I knew that he wasn't in the, like, he leaves the forest at the end of 5. Like, I remember that he was not in there and that he was in a different location. But then I was like, well, but if he's not there, then when would Lee and Lupin have been like exposed to him? But yeah. That makes sense.
I think it would have been really interesting to see Voldemort's like mental hoop jumping, sort of like when Vernon is trying to see, should I let Harry go to the Quidditch World Cup or should I keep him here? He'll be miserable if I don't let him go, but I'll be miserable if he stays. And it would have been funny to see Voldemort being like, should I kill Hagrid's giant brother? Like, that's not a wizard. I also don't want to upset all the giants around me. And also that thing's big. Like, it'd be interesting to see, like, what was the decision around letting Grupp stay alive to such a known Harry Potter? And, like, why let Hagrid live anyways when he's such an abomination to the Death Eaters sort of ideology?
I don't know that the Death Eaters care so much about that. I mean, that's a very Umbridge-y thing. Like that's her thing, not necessarily because they're
they
letting
hate
werewolves and
wizards.
hags and everybody be a part of their group.
In a lesser place, though.
So
they still have their proper
that
place.
doesn't mean that they're going to go
Hagrid
exterminate the rest of anybody who's not fully
I just
human.
mean, like, why is he still a teacher?
See, I see it, Sierra, as like eventually they are going to exterminate the non-humans. But
they're useful right now.
They're useful right now. Yeah, it's very like.
But Hagrid's not.
Right. It's very like I'm going to use them, use their biases and whatever right now, and then eventually get rid of them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the light commentary that Fred has on trying to see if it's Voldemort not creating a panic and everything, and like creating this sort of aura of mystery. And he clarifies that if Voldemort cannot kill you just by looking at you, that's a basilisk that can do that. And he says here, quote, "One simple test. Check whether the thing that's glaring at you has got legs. If it has, it's safe to look into its eyes. Although if it really is, you know who, that's still likely to do the last thing you ever do." I miss the Weasley twins, and I miss this camaraderie. And it's one of the things that has Deathly Hallows sort of fall a little bit on the Harry Potter book ranking order for me is just like, I crave, it's such a good book and I love it. I love it as a story. It's still great. And yet I love, and I miss some of this stuff that we got throughout the other books.
Yeah, it's a lot of the comic relief that we're typically getting through Weasleys is hard to come by in Deathly Hallows, considering Ron's not there for a good chunk of it, and obviously it's mostly the trio that we're seeing because they don't really interact with other people.
Yeah,
and I like how Rowling kind of acknowledges that by saying that, like, Harry feels so happy now, and it's like, wow, like suddenly I'm feeling lighter and everything. It's like, yeah, you're kind of a downer without all these other people around you, and that's how we've been feeling this whole book. Is like, it's been kind of a downer until this point, and so it's nice to get more interaction and getting that.
And to finish up the chapter, which really gets us back into this like less character building and sort of conflict building, but more back into the plot right before we go to Malfoy Manor, is Harry's idiocy. He says Voldemort, even though we know it's taboo. And I gotta say, like, Ron says immediately, we have to put the protection enchantments back up right now. Like, that's one of the things that he says, which is very quick thinking from Ron, which is good to see. But like, I went back to see if like Hermione had forgotten to put them up, or because they were listening to the radio show, they couldn't have those enchantments up, or something like that. And there's nothing like it. So from what I understand, Voldemort's cursing his name, tabooing it, is like really, really powerful. Mm-hmm. It essentially acts like a GPS beacon of enemy awareness, and it takes down all protections. So like, no wonder people were scared and kept just saying, you know who. And I imagine, like, if this was, I can't believe that somebody didn't at the Battle of Hogwarts not use the name. And it's just like Voldemort just waits for somebody to say his name and then goes in, because it like takes down all of the defensive enchantments. So like all those Sandstone Knights in the movie that jump out should have just collapsed. I'm actually kidding. Like, I clearly know that Hogwarts is better protected, but still, to be clear, like, it takes down all of Hermione's protective enchantments and GPSs them. Like, that is wildly powerful.
Yeah, when Ron is describing it earlier, he says he doesn't say it breaks all protective enchantments, but it says it breaks protective enchantments because it causes some kind of magical disturbance. So it's almost like a what am I thinking of?
EMP.
Yes, exactly. It's almost like an EMP for magic that just like disrupts it. So I almost wonder if, like, because so many of the protections rely on not being noticed, and so it like, because they now know that it's there, then they're able to like ignore them essentially. And like, because so many of her enchantments like are relying on misdirection, or, you know, don't look here and there's nothing to see type of situational things. If because that disrupts it, they can now like see through that. But I do wonder if, because obviously like we wouldn't be able to do that at Hogwarts, like you were saying. So at what level are the protective enchantments remain against a taboo, which still is pretty crazy. Cause, if they're doing it in like some pretty protected places, that would be pretty wild.
The capabilities of that form of magic are just like, and the implications that means for like the rest of the wizarding world is really insane to me. And it's like, I don't know, one of the things that's brought up so much is like, oh, well, we can't just produce food out of nothing. It's like, well, why doesn't someone with a humanitarian effort set up a spell that says, if you say I'm starving, then a plate of food comes out of a restaurant and apparates to where you are. Like you could solve so many problems with this, and like
or you could destroy the entire wizarding world. Every time a wizard breathes, it causes a magical disturbance.
Sure.
No magic exists anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit of extrapolation, but like exactly. I mean there's no limit here, and I also wonder, like, the pronunciation of Voldemort was always with a hard T at the end, and then now it's the soft T, and I'm like, how does one have to pronounce it to trigger the spell? And like, can you say Volda, wait for it, Mort, and then like does that work? I don't know. There's so many like okay, like what are the stipulations?
Can you say Voldy? Can you say Morty? Yeah, there's just a bunch of anti-Francophiles up in Scotland who are just Voldemort, and they never get caught.
I also wonder if it, like, I don't know, because it's taboo, capital T, if it still has to be, like, widely accepted in some way. Because, like, I can't imagine that there's something out there where just any Joe Schmo can go, oh, if you say hobgoblin, then like, all this stuff happens and we can find you. If you say, because otherwise, like, Auror's jobs would be so easy. Okay, someone's talking about cauldrons, someone's talking about stolen things, someone's talking about whatever. Like, you could make it any word. Like, I feel like it has to be like a widely accepted thing to be able to create a taboo, where it can't just be Voldemort going, I feel like doing this. It has to be like a bunch of wizards getting together and saying this is going to be a thing now, and then putting the magic in place. Otherwise, that's
a spell Voldemort invented, like he has with other ones.
Possibly.
And that's why nobody else has been able to do it yet. But it is interesting to think about, like, how a lot of people are scared to say certain phrases on TikTok, and so therefore we've got unaliving instead of something like suicide. It'd be interesting to see if you say the word I stole, then the Aurors would come and get you. So now there's a whole, like, don't let the censors, don't let the Aurors come get me language among thieves.
Right.
I relieved someone suddenly
of their wares.
I don't remember if the taboo existed in the first Voldemort War.
I don't think that's mentioned.
It's not explicitly said. Mm-hmm. I am surmising because of the fear around
I thought so too, but then there's always been the point of Dumbledore was never afraid to say the name. And now that could obviously be multiple reasons. Maybe the taboo didn't work in Hogwarts because Voldemort didn't have power over Hogwarts because Dumbledore was still there.
Or maybe Dumbledore killed every Snatcher. Tried to get him and just...
Or did Dumbledore just leave the castle and said, Voldemort just killed everyone on side and went back inside? Because it's a trap that could work both ways.
I had a really bad day.
Voldemort.
I feel like getting into a fight.
Just standing above a lava pit or something, and then Voldemort,
exactly. Just on a broom, hovering above lava. Voldemort, basically like an anglerfish. Not an anglerfish. Yeah. What are they called? Yeah, an anglerfish.
The ones with
That's
the
so
light,
funny.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's gonna tie us up for our main discussion. We're gonna do our last little 7 ingredients of today's specials before we let you go, Christian.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And so we've got, I think, 3 different lists of 7 things this time. It was not hard to find, and as per usual, I didn't do it at all. So Aurelia, please. Let me know. What'd you got?
So, I mean, we've long established that this is all about the qualifiers, and Christian already challenged mine, so maybe my qualifier wasn't strong enough. But I picked the 7 people that we know by name that are interacting in this chapter, which are Harry, Ron, Hermione, which are mostly in this chapter, but then also the 4 very well codenamed people from the broadcast, which are Lee Jordan, Kingsley Shacklebolt, Remus Lupin, and Fred Weasley.
So in this case, it's the 7 named people.
Yeah, that's
there's
the
that
only
last
way I can
line.
make it work.
Yep.
Because as Christian pointed out, there is a snatcher at the end going, "You're surrounded. We don't care who we curse."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the 7 that I found
The 7 named people.
is when they're looking for Horcruxes, that there's the orphanage, or the 7 places they named to go look, possibly. The orphanage, Diagon Alley, Hogwarts, the Riddle House, Borgin and Burke's, Albania, and then a little later on, Upper Flagley.
I love that they are like specific places for the most part, and then it's a whole country.
Albania, yeah.
Albania. We gotta go to Albania. But you know what's cool is, okay, so the orphanage is destroyed. There's no way, and I don't think Voldemort would have gone there because he hated it so much. The Riddle House, he created Nagini, or had Nagini at least. So at one point there was a Horcrux there. There is a Horcrux in Hogwarts, and the Horcrux was recovered. Rowena's whatever it's called, tiara,
Diadem.
recovered. Diadem, thank you. Was recovered in Albania.
Yes.
Like that's where he found it. There's nothing to do with Upper Flagley, but like they got 3 of those places. It did end up having something. Borgin and Burke's was a funny
Well,
one.
and looking at the orphanage is kind of silly because there was the cave right next to it.
Well, the cave is far away on the seacoast.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's tied to the orphanage.
Yeah,
It's tied to
And
it.
then-
Yeah, that's true. He did do a Muggle spot. Yeah.
is where Gringotts is.
And Diagon Alley, and I mean, Borgin and Burke's is essentially in Diagon Alley, too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
in Nocturne Alley, but come on. So those are kind of the same. But then, yeah, the Diagon Alley is where Gringotts is, exactly right. It's
Yeah.
like, we're there. Yeah.
Yeah, they have one in Diagon Alley. At one point, Nagini was in the house. At one point, the journal was in Borgin and Burke's right before Lucius slips it into Ginny's cauldron.
Technically
in
speaking,
Albania.
Borgin and Burke's can lead them to Hogwarts to get one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The cabinet can go right into the room. Okay, so like again, like sort of mad scientist good placing it, where they like get a lot of it right, and of course Ron is the one wrong with being like, "What about Upper Flagley? He might have wanted to live there. It's nice." And then we have one more list of 7 here.
Yes, the 7 non-human topics that are discussed. 3 Hallows, 3 Horcruxes, 1 radio program.
And 1 rumpet horn. Sorry to kill you.
Fine.
Oh, Sam.
I mean, technically they don't talk about the 3 individual Horcruxes, so it was a stretch to begin with.
Yeah.
I'll come up with another one. 3 Hallows, Horcruxes in general, a rumpet horn, radio program, and the Blackthorn one that Harry hates. There you go.
Xenophenius' Lovegood's house, and the Basilisk, and
Okay.
protection spells over Muggles' houses, and Minister for Magic Jobs, and
It's topics that Harry, Ron, and Hermione are discussing.
I can't wait for someone to eventually do a podcast about this podcast and find the 7 topics talked about within each episode of your podcast. It's just going to go deeper and deeper.
It's very David Tennant and Michael Sheen's show.
Good Omens.
Good
Yeah,
Omens was the other one. Staged.
Oh, staged. That's the one,
staged.
yeah.
It's very staged, which it starts out as like a sort of fairly normal in COVID show, and then immediately becomes meta in season 2, and only gets more meta as it goes. That would be my recommendation. Instead of the Pubs Jukebox, I've got the Pubs TV. It has on Harry Potter star David Tennant, who played Barty Crouch Jr. In Goblet of Fire, and staged is great. You should all go watch it. It's really funny. Great comedy show. Today's chapter was sponsored by Mad Scientists. You know them. You love them. They're crazy. They're kooky. They know a lot more than you do, and they will absolutely mess up your life should you get in their way. Mad Scientists, thanks so much for giving Harry a little taste of your brain so that he can regale us with his fascinating theories that are all 100% right. And it's also brought to you by Ted Danson, who definitely didn't sponsor this podcast and has no idea about us. But if you haven't watched The Good Place and you're like, what are they talking about? It's a fun show.
It's a comedy
show. You can see it on Netflix, all 4 seasons.
It's a good comedy show.
And speaking of comedy shows... Great. Thank you, Christian Richardson, for being here.
Hey, good transition. You're so welcome. It's been a blast, you guys. I love listening to you guys talk, and I'm glad that I can contribute somehow.
It was awesome to have you back as a guest. Really love having you on the Three Broomsticks. Do you? I think last time you plugged go for a run and listen to podcasts. Is there anything that you would like to plug this time?
Just get rid of the technology. I don't know, guys. The more I think of like, oh, where can we follow you? I'm like, I'm not Voldemort. Don't follow me.
Don't get rid of all technology. You still need to listen to the show, though.
Yeah, exactly.
We do want you to listen to the podcast.
Go find them in their houses and listen. You
can hear really. 1/4 of the show at any given time.
I don't know. Nothing to follow with me. Just live your life, guys.
And while we're thanking people, huge thanks again to Sam Oman, who bought us this round of drinks at the Three Broomsticks.
Thank you,
if
Sam.
you would
Sam.
like to buy us the next round, please head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks. That's with the numeral 3 to sign up. You can also help by rating and reviewing us. And if you like our show, please don't forget to tell your friends. Word of mouth is super helpful. We always love to see those connections out there and new people coming into the show. If you would like to follow us on social media, unlike Christian, you can find us on X, TikTok, maybe, Instagram, Facebook. All of our assorted handles that are accurate and up to date can be found in the episode description or on our website, along with our email address. That website is 3broomstickspod.com. That is with the number 3 spelled out like a word. I know that was a confusing way to say that, but it's THREE, folks. And you can find links to anything that we mention. You can submit a topic. We would love to get some new ideas, thinking towards next year. Let us know.
Yes,
Tell
absolutely.
us your thoughts, new topics. What did you think about this episode? Any episode? Let us know.
Also, y'all, we have a new Harry Potter show that's going to be coming out in the next 2 years, most likely. They have a writer. They have a showrunner. They're going to be doing casting soon. If you and your friends, especially your friends, because you're already listening to this podcast, please tell your friends about us, because then they can get reacquainted with Harry Potter in a delectable and wonderful way. You can regale your friends with all of the wonderful insights that you've gotten from this very focused and short podcast. So please tell your friends about us before this show gets rolling, and that way we can be at the prime of our viewership, helping you all understand what's the difference between Monkswood and that other one that he says.
Monkshood and Wolfsbane.
Finally, what you said
Wolfsbane.
earlier, this episode will make sense, where it's like, if you listen to this without having read the previous books.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
But next time that we are all together in the pub, we'll be discussing dragons. It was literally just changed. This is the magic of technology.
Yes. Dragons.
Is it not the House of Dragons crossover anymore?
Nope.
It will be inclusive
It'll be mentioned.
of it. They shall be mentioned.
Okay. So
But it's not exclusive, so it's just dragons.
Okay. So yes, dragons.
Dragons throughout
Dragons it
literature.
is.
Dragons.
Aragon and
Yep.
All that jazz.
Go ahead. What about the rest of them? You list them out all, Christian.
There was
Go for it.
the German writer Cornelia Funke who wrote the Dragon Rider,
Yep,
which
Dragon
is now
Rider,
a
that's on the
trilogy.
list.
Yeah, Dragon Rider. There's the Knights of Autumn Twilight or whatever, the Dragonlance series, which is huge and expansive, and I loved as a teenager.
well, there's Reign of Fire, the Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale movie.
I also want to apologize to everyone who's listened to almost the end of this episode, and then we've derailed on the last point of the talk.
The next topic will be dragons. You're Aurelia. No, I'm kidding.
How to Train Your Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon? It's a great one. Oh, man, yeah.
I have a list.
Actual mythology.
Pete's Dragon.
Well, I'm definitely excited to learn more about dragons, and I've been Aurelia.
I've been Sierra.
I'm Sam. Thank you for listening. See you next time in the Three Broomsticks.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all. Christian, say cheers.
Cheers.
Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
This episode of The Three Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by The Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Sorry, I'm going to pause really fast. I think my husband started the dryer, which unfortunately he needs to have happen before he can go to work tonight. So I'm going to try to mess with my gain for just a second to get that noise
My
out of
son
there.
is also up, so it's perfect timing here. Yeah.
Pause for a moment.
I'm not going to stop the dryer because then my husband will have a wet shirt for
Yeah.
work. That's
Or PB&J.
not nice. I'm not mean like that. I made him wear a wet shirt to work.
That was it. There were no other problems.
No. That's so funny. If that was ever like I can see, like, I have absolutely no intention of ever getting divorced. Not that I think people do, but, like, you know, I have absolutely no intention of getting to that point ever. But I feel like if I did, it would be over something really dumb. It'd be like just this one thing. It's like we just could not get past that stupid wet shirt. Like,
Wet shirt.
we brought it up every day for a year.
Andrew's just in the background. Yeah, I got hypothermia. I went to the hospital for 6 months. It's not just a small deal.
Oh man.